Welcome to another Forensic Happy Hour. I'm Lee Reber, and obviously before this started, I had some conversation with Krista. Krista Miller's going to be the guest, and we have known each other for a long time. We're trying to figure out exactly how long that is, but we think it's over 10 years. I think it might be a little bit longer. But, like I said, a little different perspective, I think. We've had practitioners, we had a lot of these things, but, not only Krista's been in the kind of the industry, but I bet you sees it from kind of a different lens. So I'm excited. I think this is going to be a great, well, I know it's going to be a great conversation because it's just chatting and drinking beer, which is always good for, well, at least for me. So, okay, we're here, and the cheers, and thank you very much for coming on the show, Krista. It's you look lovely as always, and so what I want to do on kind of obviously the conversation and how I always kind of start the conversations is really to try to get not when you're born and everything else, but when you started into even into the writing, what did you do? What propelled you into what you're doing now, and bring everything you've done to us right now.
I have to go all the way back to fourth grade when I
Wow.
won a writing competition in my school. And it was either in the school or it was in the district. I don't quite remember. I just was really excited to have won this huge competition for something that I wrote. Um, because up until that point, I had been sort of more on the art side, drawing and painting and whatnot, and I wasn't really that good at it. But writing was something obviously I was good at. So um, that sort of continued throughout school, throughout high school into college. Obviously writing papers for college was something I enjoyed. My first job, though, in college was on a help desk. And so, the computer clusters, the internet was brand new. And yes, I am dating myself. But, Usenet, Telnet, all of that, Linux, et cetera. And so learning that, not just learning the systems, but also learning how to solve technical problems was sort of the first thing that I ever did professionally. And so that lasted for a few years. Didn't see myself doing that for the next 20 years. It just, the help desk thing sort of it didn't jazz me as much as writing did. And so when I decided to get out of that, I had to go back, figure out like, what am I going to write about? People tell you the advice is write what you
Mhm.
know. In my case, that was law enforcement. In high school and into college, I had been a law enforcement explorer, super geeky, in my little police department in New Hampshire, and learned a lot about the profession then. And so I kind of mashed the two things up together, and here I am. In fact, my career started, like the first article that I ever had published was literally the month after 9/11, and it had nothing to do with terrorism. It had nothing to do with anything. And I figured if I could still get stuff published after that point, that I was doing pretty well. As it happened, that was when all of the grant funding started to roll in, and a lot of the technology started to advance, and my editors really needed somebody who could explain technology and through the help desk experience. So that's pretty much it. I did that for the next 10 years. I went into PR and marketing not long after that, because by then I had worked with a lot of vendors and writing articles. I sort of knew what was going on. I worked in marketing for 7 years, and now I'm back self-employed again. I am writing articles. I'm back in journalism. Needed a change of pace, and it's been a fun one so far.
So on the technology side of it, obviously, was that something that you would say, "Hey, I'm glad I did the help desk," because obviously you're at a help desk, you're dealing with technology, right? As you say, with the internet and all these different types of communication modes, which there weren't a whole bunch of graphics, right? It's just like a whole bunch of letters. And so when you're going through that, do you think that was the foundation that helped you out, or was that more of the interest that helped you out to become kind of the technical writer, or in that technology that you're doing now?
It was absolutely foundational. It was, I dealt with a whole range of, really super technical people to not technical people at all. And so that was useful when I was writing for law enforcement because, back then, my little police department in New Hampshire that I mentioned, when I started there, they didn't even have MDTs in the cruisers. These were not computer people, and so when I was writing for that audience, being able to kind of go step by step and talk in very plain language about what the technology was and what it was expected to do was extremely useful.
Yeah, and so in thinking of that too, obviously, yeah, foundational, but I mean, is having the perspective, kind of the law enforcement side of it. I don't want to say dumbing technology down, but is there a certain way to, obviously approach that and to explain that to your readers, because it can be quite technical, right? Are there different audiences that you might write and I mean be extremely technical versus other audience that hey, let's just give them this type of information?
I mean, it depends on who you're writing for. Like I kind of always wrote to the patrol officer and their commander when I was writing for law enforcement technology, and at that point, it was about solving the problems that they were running into, or solving the anticipated problems that they were running into with the different technology. So, like as an example, back in 2003 was the first article I ever wrote about mobile forensics,
Mm-hmm.
and nobody was doing it at that time. Like I had to kind of hunt down sources. I had, one anonymous source in a corrections facility in Michigan, and the only other person who was willing to be named worked for the Sacramento Valley High Tech Crimes Unit task
It's
force.
okay, you can
And
say his name.
he's probably well known in the community, right?
Come
That was Kip
on.
Loving at the time.
Yes, yes, Kip.
Kip introduced us. But anyway, so he was the only person at that time that was willing to go on the record regarding mobile forensics. And again, it was one of those things that was like, what's the problem? What are we trying to solve for? Like, what's the data that's being stored on these devices? Why is it important to your investigation? And so that was kind of that aspect. Now, something like Forensic Focus, where I am now as content manager, obviously the audience is a lot more technical, but even within that population or that audience, there's still a real range of everyone from students who are just starting out to longtime practitioners like yourself. So it's a little bit it's kind of an interesting challenge and balance of figuring out how technical do I want to get, what are the topics that I want to address, et cetera. So.
Yeah. And so in thinking on I want to go back to Kip. Remind me if I forget, because I do that because there's an interesting thing in the news now. But so if we take that kind of the writing and the writing skill, I find it is a lost art, and I mean not just the technical writing of it, but as if we talk about an examiner, a forensic person. I mean, how important is that to the investigation, the DFIR stuff? That here's all the stuff that I have. How is it important for them to be able to articulate that, in the written word, right? Because a lot of times the written word and the spoken word and all those other, it's like whatever, print the report and get out. I mean, so how is it important for them to, for investigators to have an understanding of writing? And I mean, are there any examples or any help that you can give to those people who are out there that are creating these reports?
Um, I mean, I think that the simpler the better when it comes to writing. There's always the chance that something is going to end up in court, right? It may be a low chance. I think I was reading not long ago that I think something like 97% or 98% of all criminal cases in the US end up in plea bargains. So, the chances of actually going to court may be low, but there's still 2-3% chance. And so if that happens, then being able to explain it to a jury or a judge or even an attorney that may not be a very technical person, I think is absolutely critical. And so, just not, again, like you said, it's not dumbing it down. It's just explaining it in really, really simple terms, in explaining it in terms that people can relate to. So, for example, there's a Jim Cook is a cell call detail record expert that I've talked to, and he's talked in terms of explaining cellular tower radiuses in terms of slicing a pie. Slicing a pie is something that grandma on the jury can understand, and I think any kind of analogy that an examiner can come up with like that is going to be really critical to being able to be on the stand and explain that in a way that and it's challenging too because a lot of the technology is advancing so rapidly that our understanding of it is challenging. When I'm doing an interview and I'm having to come up with questions, some of them are kind of dumb because it may be technology that I've never been exposed to before. Fortunately, most of my sources are very patient with me when that happens, but a juror might not be as patient. So I think the better and more deeply you can understand something, the easier it becomes to explain at that simpler level.
So let's talk about that with technology advances, because obviously you've been doing this a long time as well, and writing kind of on the the technology side of it. I, it's my opinion is it's crazy. I mean, if you look at the growth and the changes that are in, I don't see that in any other, obviously profession or people who are doing this type of these types of investigations. So how do you, I mean, prepare yourself? Because, as you said, you might interview someone and I know for sure because you're very good at what you do that obviously you research it like any good, say, journalist or someone who's going to write this is going to research it and understand it. But how difficult is that with things that change day to day? I mean, if we talk about mobile devices, right? The mobile device, it all might look the same but in form factor, but obviously the stuff on it completely changes. There's different types. So I mean, what do you do to prepare? Because what you do to prepare might be something that an investigator might want to do too, right? To understand the technologies.
Yeah, it really it's actually similar, I think, to what an investigator might do because it starts with like a question or a problem that you're trying to solve. And so in my case, I'm not trying to solve a problem, I'm trying to tell a story. I might have like 2,000 words to do it in, which really is not a lot. I have a big picture brain. I tend to be kind of a kitchen sink writer. I'll throw in 5,000 words and then, kind of try to pare it down from there, which is probably my biggest challenge when I'm writing because there really is so much to write about and, so many different angles to a story. And I love to go deep, but not everybody likes to read deep. So my big challenge is figuring out like what's the kind of central story that I'm trying to tell here, and what are the elements that are going to support that story. And so something like AI, the first thing that I ever wrote about AI was when I was in marketing and magnet forensics. I knew nothing about machine learning, knew nothing about AI. I knew that there was one particular problem that they were trying to solve at that time when Magnet.ai was first out, and that was grooming content. I didn't even really know where to research for that. What terms to Google because I'm
Yeah, be
pretty good with
careful about
keywords.
Googling those terms.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
So
somebody's going to be knocking on your door. Hey, you were
yeah,
looking at something.
I warn my kids. I'm like, just don't, whatever you do, just don't bring feds to our doorstep,
Right,
please.
exactly.
I basically what I did for that is I just sat down with the product people and let them talk. And my first draft was really not that good. It kind of missed the point entirely. And fortunately, they were able to come back and say like, no, this is missing the point entirely, and kind of help me shape it from there. My second draft was a lot better, but yeah, that was that was definitely a challenge. And I think it's a combination sometimes of Google or research that's been done. I've been delving a lot into academic research lately. I think there's some really cool papers that are coming out from a lot of the institutions, a lot of the journals, and then just having people to talk to. I think I'm really blessed in this community. There are a lot of people, experts who are willing to be very forthcoming with information and have a wealth of knowledge. And even though journalism does not have a great rap right now, people are willing to talk about what they're doing because they're doing some pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, so if we talk a little bit about, obviously you have in the writing aspect, again, there's research that people need to do. So when you put this stuff together, what would you say is, I guess, your favorite thing to write about on a technology side, or not even a technology side? I mean, is there something that you sit down, you're like, oh my gosh, and the next thing you know, you're like, I got like 10 pages. Is there something that you enjoy?
Yeah, I like writing. I think my favorite stories are the ones where people are making a genuine difference in whatever it is. It's whether it's the research that they're contributing to their community or it's something brand new that no one has ever done
Hmm.
before. I just the article that we just published recently about high school, training up high school students and middle school students. There was a cool little story in there, not just about the cyber camps that I wrote about, but also an actual project that a video forensics examiner had done with a high school computer club in his area. And that was such a cool story. Being able to talk to the teacher that worked with the students that built this tool, frame rate authentication tool, that was just a really, really interesting opportunity. So
Yeah.
I think, in everything going on with the pandemic and political unrest and all of that, like it was such a positive story to be able to work on that it actually ended up being kind of good for my mental health.
Right.
So yeah, I love those stories in general, and just anything people are trying to do to make a difference.
Yeah, so that leads me to another question. I mentioned previously about community, and so have you seen, because of obviously the last 6 7 months, that we've all been, the world's been kind of dealing with the whole pandemic and everything else. Have you seen the community participation, or those people that are out helping, the people that are doing beer talks, the people that are doing things, that are trying to contribute? Do you see that more, prior to this, to this 6 month 7 month lockdown, no conference type of stuff? I mean, do you see the community growing positively?
I do. Yeah. I think that there's a lot of different ways that people are trying to jump in and contribute what they have. Whether it's the Share the Mic and Cyber initiative that I've seen, or even just contributing to like the dfir Discord server, obviously the forensic focus forums. I think people are really trying to make an effort. I think it's been good to see a lot of the sort of the big names in the community talking about all the various different ways that it's possible to contribute. So going back to the high school program article example, at the SANS DFIR summit, Lee Whitfield got up there and was talking about all the different, opportunities that people had to come in and maybe teach some of the kids. Daryl Fife, same thing at DFRWS. She was talking about different roles or different needs that her organization has for getting this material across to students. So there's really it's not limited to just research or just writing blogs or just tweeting. I mean, it's really, I think there are so many different ways for people to really use their strengths, whatever those are. It could be writing, it could be podcasting, it could be just I mean, anything, just sharing knowledge on wherever is,
Yeah, so if we look at that because I had Lee on here as well,
Mhm.
and one of his, he was talking about, well, if he's watching this or does watch a replay, he was dethroned by the most watches, so he's gonna have to come back on here and take that over again. But obviously he brought up that same thing, and there's a couple other guests as well that talking about the outreach, whether it be the outreach to kids. There's a lot of initiatives that you have, for people and bringing kids into this, but there's also the opportunities too of people who are, giving their skills pro bono to those that might not be able to afford it, right? So there's a lot of things that have moved, and I've kind of, I've seen it from my, this is my opinion, but I always thought, I always bring up silver lining type of thing that people have become in this whole thing. I think for the most part more human, and then understanding that what there's there's a lot of things that we need to do to help each other out, right? I mean, are you seeing that?
Yeah, I am. I'm, as you're talking, I'm sitting here thinking the one thing that I think is still a little bit stigmatized that I would like to see more people talk about is mental health.
Yeah.
I think more people are talking about it, which is really good, but sort of more in general terms. And I think that it's important to it's the most important thing, but it's also the scariest thing to, for people to get vulnerable and to talk about, what's really hitting them. What are they really struggling with? I was just chatting on Twitter with a journalist acquaintance about some of the anxieties that I think we're all feeling at this point. I've certainly noticed it with some of my regular contacts. I have a little cohort of lawyers that I've been working with for the Forensic Focus Legal Update, which is a quarterly publication, and I think they're more challenged. Some of them are doing online training. Some of them are trial attorneys, and they're going back to court now, and they've not only got their regular workload, they've got their backlogged workload, and so getting in touch with people is in general harder, I think, because of the workload shifts. And so as the workload shifts, then you're starting to see more burnout, and burnout even in a single person can take so many different forms. I mean, I've had burnouts where I just wanted to sit and read constantly, or I had a different burnout where all I was doing was playing solitaire for like hours a day, and I could not figure out why I couldn't get out of that loop. And I knew it was burnout on one level, and on another level, it was like, no, because this doesn't look anything like the last burnout. So
Right.
like
Right.
things like that, I think
Yeah.
people really
Isn't
need
that
to,
interesting? It's very
yeah.
interesting is that you look at it in everyone that I've talked to, everyone goes, yeah, people. There's an expectation that you're not having work, and that they're like it's blown up.
Yeah.
So and, it has to do with people are working at home. How are they, either some IR stuff that the company, how are they going to protect this? Oh, there's some intrusion because the other people aren't nice, right? You're continue to have it, and typically people take advantage of situations that are people are at home. They're going to be maybe more vulnerable to phishing attacks, and then now having to do the forensics. I 100% agree with you. You watch and you talk to some of these examiners, and they're just like going, I mean, I can't take a day off. I can't take a day off. One,
Hmm.
I'm locked at home. My kids are at home. They have to
Hmm.
do all of their homework. They have to do
Hmm.
so. I mean, it's not only the workload. I think that there's a lot of stresses that are
Hmm.
obviously here that go in and kind of weigh on top of these examiners. And so, again,
Yep.
it's I think that is a huge problem. I mean, not only for the examiners, but look at the rest of the world who aren't even involved in
Hmm.
it, right? And going back to my patrol days is back then doing a mental hold, right? You'd have to go in, you go in, you bring someone in for do the 24 hours, those types of things.
Hmm.
There's no less. I mean, that back there was almost every night that you're at, you as one patrol unit is handling that, having multiples right now with all the other stuff going on. So I think that the whole mental health, the world side of it, but then if we talk about the examiners and how much data they're having to process and how many things they're going to have to do, working 80 to 90 hours, again, I think that is going to become an issue.
Yeah, for sure. And too, I think as I was talking before, I was thinking to myself, we're talking about mental health and the need to talk about mental health. The need for people to open up, and I think there's almost a vulnerability there for examiners to be talking about mental health when they know that there might be attorneys watching or supervisors watching, on social media, and that's another challenge. But I, for
Don't get
me,
me
I
started
think
on social media, people. Yeah, go ahead.
I know. I just think that I think if supervisors and attorneys, but especially supervisors, if you're going online and you're looking at what your people are tweeting and you're concerned about the way that might come across, take a step back and think about not how does this make our organization look or how is this person going to come across on the stand, but look at the person. Look at this person might be having a problem. What kinds of intervention do I as a supervisor need to take to protect my employee? And I think that there needs to be a lot less fear going on around that, and a lot more empathy, compassion for people in general, because we're all suffering right now.
Yeah.
We're all cut off from each other. We're all feeling burned out. The connection points are dwindling, and the more of that happens, the harder time people are going to have, and the more that we're really going to need our friends and managers to step up for us.
Yeah, again,
If we
yeah.
don't feel like we can do it.
Yeah, I think that's really important. Again, with the community type of stuff, with that understanding. You had mentioned that obviously with the Discord server, there's a whole bunch of. I had, we had talked about that. That kind of comes out every week. Obviously, people are bringing their problems, right? They're their work problems, not necessarily their mental problems that they might
Sure. Right.
that they have onto those. But I mean, if we go back to, and not to change the subject, but with AI, what do you see? I mean, what are you hearing? Obviously, you're doing an investigation on it. What do you see that playing a role in the examiner's workload, right? Well, I mean, do you see that more of, and what's an analogy, right? So that Amazon now has all these robots who are now filling things and doing that, and others. Do you see that an examiner's role is going to dwindle more or less now? We're going to have and be able to do and automate things, use some sort of AI?
No, I don't think so. I think the kind of I haven't really had a chance to delve into this research as much as I want to. That's going to be a project for next year. But one thing that I've looked at is the difference between a deterministic and a probabilistic algorithm. And so I think the majority of AI that we see currently deployed in forensic tools is probabilistic, which means that yes, a lot can be automated of trying to figure out is this image child abuse material, or is this image something else. Cuts down on the amount of visual work that an investigator has to do, cuts down on the amount of stress that person's going to be under, but still needs human review. So no, I don't think that examiner workload is going to dwindle by any stretch. I think that if anything, more research is going to be needed on, perhaps not that they won't need to research the tools. I just think it's going to change a little bit. So, for instance, validating how the AI is coming up with its results might be one area of research. David Cowan was talking about in one of his keynotes this summer about cloud and the impact that that's going to have on incident responders as well as criminal investigations, and so it already is having, right? I think if anything, the more gets automated, the more opportunities that gives for examiners to to look at other areas that they might not otherwise be able to, right? If they were still having to do things manually.
Yeah, so I 100% agree with you. I mean, you're able to automate things, and I think a lot of the AI too that'll continue to do that will help streamline. Be able to go in. Image categorization you might have. That you're able to go in and pull these things in, looking for that. All the needles, but find me the red needle. Those types of things that when you're looking through all that information is going to help. But you're exactly right. I mean, the human review and being able to, you know, go into it, understand where it lives. I mean, it's very, very hard to train something, to say, okay, here's this, this is why, this is where, and then still put the human aspect on it. So again, so all you guys are watching it, make sure you're good, your job's good for a long time, But
So,
again, I don't see, as in being able to conduct the investigation on that because I think that there's a big human element. I mean, whether that's good or bad, right? Because sometimes somebody it just depends upon the lens that you're looking at it, right?
mhm.
Data typically doesn't lie, but if you only have this little piece of the data, right? You have this part of the story. And you hang your hat on this side of the story, but then someone else puts the lens of truth and finds the bigger picture. Obviously they look and report it completely different. So how do you fix that? Well, you remove a human from it, but I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, what's your opinion on that? Because I always go back to training and kind of the training side of it. How do we go in and train people equally, or allow people to say, okay, yeah, this is it, but no, I want to look a bit further, or they're just going to say, here's a smoking gun. Do you think that can ever be fixed?
Um, that's another area I've been researching that I'm hoping to write about in 2021. Is not just the training, but also the process. And standardization is a hot button term. I know that. But I do think, a lot of the research that I've been looking at over the last few months really centers around that. So it's not necessarily, making cookie cutters out of the process. It's more making sure that the process is more scientific. So, a lot of practitioners in the industry like to say that digital forensics is both an art and a science. And what I'm seeing is there's a bit of a push to bring more science back into it. And I don't want to say back into it necessarily, because I think the science has always been there, but things like going back to probabilistic algorithms, bringing perhaps more probabilistic reasoning. There are some approaches now that are that's looking to test sets of data against particular hypotheses,
Mm.
and not to get mathy about it, right? I mean, I would fail miserably. I am not a math person, but I think most cops aren't. But at the same time, I mean, we see it in collision reconstruction. There's a lot of math in collision reconstruction, and I think when it comes to digital forensic examination, being able to just statistically test data is might become more important.
Yeah. So going back to that is my fear. Obviously, we no, I don't want to say it's my fear, but you have people that as I said, data doesn't lie, but with digital information, we see this every day. At least I do. I see the information that's out there, but you can see the information, but there's really two stories. I mean, how are there two stories that people can tell with the same type of information? If I look at this, right? Why is we have, and I'll just take it on the say the law enforcement side of it, right? You have the prosecutor, you have the defense. The defense might have, this is the idea that they have here, the expert witness that they have for on the prosecutor side and the expert witness they have on the defense. They have the same type of information. How can they come up with two different responses to that type of data?
um, I think that's the the attraction of something like pattern of life analysis, which is something that like Alexis Bergoni and Sarah Edwards have been researching quite a bit of. I mean, that's been around forever. It, it's being able to, I mean, it's the concept of timelines, right, which has been in digital forensics for forever ever. But being able to extrapolate that out across data sets and saying that within this time frame there's this data, here's this other data that can corroborate, and going back to what I was saying about hypotheses and probabilities, depending on what data sets can or cannot corroborate that evidence, I think is what what makes the difference in those stories that you're talking about.
So
I
what
had a thought, it just went out of my head.
yeah, no, I kind of turn, I mean, my term for that is taking data out of context, right?
Right, of course.
You know,
Yeah.
just like someone might say something and you're like, I can't believe they said that. But, you're seeing this, but you're not seeing really collectively what's going on, which is the same kind of what I had mentioned before, is that I'm hanging my hat off of one event versus, okay, what happened before, after, and leading up to that, because now I'm taking it out
Yeah,
of context.
that is the concern, I think, about having about timelines in particular, or about having an overly narrow time frame. For instance, in your search warrant, is like, can you be sure that there's not exculpatory data on either side of that time frame, or inculpatory data for that matter? Are you looking at the full? Again, going back to the pattern of life. Well, is this part of their normal? Your victim's normal or your suspect's normal? Did they deviate at all? And I think I was talking to an OSINT examiner not long ago that said that you really want to go back, ideally 60 days or so. Now, that obviously raises privacy concerns, and with the attorneys that I mentioned I've been talking to, there's really not, as far as we know, case law that's talking about that specific thing, because it's a relatively recent phenomenon making its way through the courts. And I think you see some of it with like geofencing warrants and some of that. There's sort of like little bits of those issues that are coming into play, but not cohesively, and that makes it challenging, as well as figuring out like what can I do here, what's possible, and what might end up in court as bad case law or
Right.
good case law.
So that begs a question, though. I mean, are you, or have you, thought about writing really technology towards judges, towards prosecutors? Because I think the education of those individuals, that's extremely important, right? So that they can formulate questions, ask the right questions, and not just rely on the data or the information that they're given by the examiner, right? So how important is that? Because I know NCFI had some prosecutor courses, but who else is doing this, right? I mean, so what have you moved or thought about, or have you already written articles targeting and helping people to understand that technology, or giving them resources to maybe to look into that? Because I think that's important.
Yeah, I do. So the forensic focus legal update I mentioned is a quarterly thing that we're doing that tries to capture articles from around the web that we've been working on. And so where that content lives is I have a Medium site called Forensic Horizons, which is where a lot of that sort of the deeper analysis of where technology and the law intersect live. As I'm writing over there and collaborating with my attorney sources over there, I'm able to meet up with other attorneys that are thinking about the same things, and including those in the when they're writing their articles, including those in the Forensic Focus Legal Update as well. And then I'm also noticing there are other organizations that are engaging in this kind of training that you mentioned that NCFI is doing. So, for instance, I believe National District Attorneys Association is doing some. I know the National Cybercrime Conference in Massachusetts is really strong on that. I think it's one of the few trainings in the country that brings together law enforcement and prosecutors it's very effective.
Hmm.
Um, I know, I believe that the bar associations in the different states have trainings for criminal defense attorneys, and I think that's important as well, to be able to have that balanced viewpoint of looking at forensic evidence. And then there are other organizations. I want to say NW3C has prosecutor courses, and also the Zero Abuse Project,
Hmm.
where one of the attorneys that I've been working with comes from, and they're working on some things as well, as far as I know. So.
Yeah. So with this obviously crazy year that we have, and what what are you seeing, or what do you think is going to happen towards the, say, the conference type of deal, right? Do you see
Mm.
that? I There's a lot of positives, right? There's some positives for these conferences. Do you see them moving more towards online, or say a hybrid approach, being able to have people that are going to go to these, but also offer that online? I mean, what are your feelings on that?
Um, I would like to see more online. Personally, I mean, I like traveling. I miss the travel. I miss seeing people at conferences. But as I mean, even when I was in marketing as a journalist, but also when I was in marketing, I would sometimes miss out or feel like I was missing out on different
Right.
sessions. And with the online format, I really like
True.
being able to, go back and look at things. And I found, personally, I found that it's easier to attend a bunch of sessions and then kind of mash them up, like look at the patterns over time. I mean, it's a lot to go to 3 different conferences in 2 weeks, but at the same time, it helped me to see kind of the broader themes that were going on in the industry. So I think there's a lot of value to that. Obviously, it saves money.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you look at it, again, I have analogy. See, the more I drink, I think of analogies. Is like the Netflix of the DFIR world, right? So now, and I don't want to throw Netflix, you can call it, Prime or Hulu, whatever you're watching, is that you're like, oh, that's cool. It's like, I'm going to watch this now. And I think, I'm telling you what, that is being able to dial into something. People might have, because it was always, okay, we want to have different conferences. We're not going to schedule the conference then because there's another conference the following week. Now people are like, yeah, whatever. You can have them all on the same day because I'm going to see them all, right?
Mhm.
I can tune in to the DFIR network and, yep, that conference there. So, I mean, there's a lot of positives. If anybody wants to go in on a deal or something, so starting that network, let me know. But no, to be serious, I think it's been a positive if we look at it, because look at, and I brought this up many weeks ago, but with the summit, right, DFIR summit that you had,
Yep.
how many do they usually average that would go there, those show up? I mean, you might have 1,500 maybe, that
Mhm.
20,000. So you're
Mhm.
looking at that, and you're
Yep.
looking at all these NCCCC and everything else is hugely successful, because
Mhm.
again, like you said, people are able to attend everything. I
Yep.
mean, to be able to go into all these and watch the recordings, do all of that other. Again, the people who lose out on this are hotel industry, airline industries, all those others. So,
Mhm.
if
Mhm.
obviously
Mhm.
you have the whole hybrid approach to this, and people being able to do, even if I went to something and I watched it, I would still subscribe to to be able to watch the other things that I was not able to attend to live. So again, I think it comes to the community side of it. What are your
Mhm.
thoughts moving forward? I mean, I know that you want to attend those, you like traveling those, but do you think that they're going to go away and they'll just be all online, kind of virtual?
Um, I honestly don't know. I don't know how to answer that because I think there's too many unknowns with the pandemic.
Right.
I mean, I'm saying this, South Carolina, where I live, Greenville County, cases are going upward again, and deaths are going up again nationwide. So I would like to think that that will bring training and networking back. I mean, the networking is especially critical.
Mm.
Just being able to get together and do happy hour.
Yeah.
But when Techno this year in Myrtle Beach got postponed from June to September, I was
Hmm.
happy about that.
Right.
and then in September, September was getting closer and closer, and I was like, I don't know,
Yeah, right.
and then it got postponed again until next June, and
Yeah.
so, I was relieved about that. So I think it's a wait and see,
So tell me, a couple. I don't want to keep you too much longer. But
No worries.
tell me. So in your writing, what is something? I mean, on a technology side of it that you wrote and you went, wow, that's really cool. I mean, is there something that just sticks out in your head of something that you wrote about on the technology side that you thought was extremely fascinating, helps the human race, whatever is something that
Mhm.
you still sticks with you?
Honestly, I think my grooming white paper that I wrote for Magnet Forensics, that was on the AI, of grooming. That was definitely because that, like I said, I had never written about machine learning before that. That was really cool. Um, Other than that, I think this year being able to write more about, like I said, the academic research has been really, really eye-opening. It was like a dimension that I hadn't really been exposed to before, and so that's been really exciting. I think that a lot of the students at the master's and PhD level are coming out with some really cool stuff. They're I saw some presentations at DFRWS about industrial control system forensics that blew me away. I thought that was researchers at Virginia Commonwealth University presented that research, and I thought it was so well done and so cool. I think University of New Haven is doing some cool things. I was just writing about that, about some cool experimentation that they've been doing with virtual reality in a training setting. Things like that are, just the cutting edge, to use a cliche, are what I'm paying attention to most.
Yeah. No, I think that one that you had mentioned that freaks me out is anything that is in the energy sector
Yeah.
or anything else that has some sort of computer. I think that people need to stop that. But anyway, there's too many things that are connected that drives me crazy. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
I
You're
mean,
welcome. Thank you.
I appreciate the time because, like I said, a different perspective on in the whole kind of digital forensic scene. And you've been doing it a long time, and I appreciate everything that you have done and continue to contribute to the community.
Thank you for the kind
So,
words. I appreciate that.
anytime,
All
anytime.
right.
I'll have you back, and we'll do Lee Whitfield on here too. You guys together, so we can
Or you
make
can
fun of him.
have Kip Loving and me as
Oh
well.
yeah, oh yeah. You reminded me. I'm gonna have Kip on here because I need to get his perspective on with Scott Peterson because what's
Ooh,
going
yes,
on right now.
yes, yes.
So I
Yeah.
think, you know what? Good idea. I'm
It'll
going
be
to email
interesting.
him. We're going to get him
Good.
on here. So we're going to talk about then and now and what's
Good
going
deal.
on. So
Yeah.
other than, he used to have big hair, but now he doesn't. So awesome. Okay, cool. Thank you so much again. Well rounded. I mean, I'm telling you what, we went all over the place. It was a fantastic conversation. Going from obviously talking about really writing, I think that's extremely important, especially as you're an investigator, and then coming in and just understanding that foundation. Because once you get the bug of the digital forensics, I'm telling you what, it's you guys will continue on and to continue doing that. So make sure that you're looking, make sure that you're following. And obviously, the Twitter handle you saw with Krista M. Miller, make sure that you go on there, follow her, find out all the fantastic writings that she does for Forensic Focus and everywhere else. So, again, I appreciate everyone's time. Thanks for hanging out on Friday. Have a good weekend, and see you again next week.